Hi everyone, I am Vaibhav and in this video we are going to discuss about section 11 which talks about void marriages of the Hindu Marriage Act 1955. So before starting with the presentation and the concept of section 11, first I would just like to discuss briefly about the different kinds of marriages. So like there are three types of marriages broadly, which are valid, void and voidable marriages. So in case of valid marriages, as is evident from the name itself, the marriage is valid or it is complete in the eyes of the law. And secondly, in the case of voidable marriages, the marriage has been induced with some sorts of uh, due to some things which are not permitted by the law. For example, if a marriage is induced by fraud or force, then that marriage becomes voidable. And by saying that it becomes voidable, it means that the person who has been forced, who has been coerced or fraudulently induced to marry could go to the court and say that I do not want to remain in this marriage, so please give me a decree to get out of this marriage and declare and annul this marriage. The third category of marriages is void marriages. So these marriages has such elements which are completely prohibited by the laws, and when such marriages happen, the law does not recognize them altogether. And so such marriages, to in a simple way, do not actually exist in the eyes of law. So now we are going to discuss about section 11. So, nullity of marriage and divorce. So, void marriages, any marriage solemnized after the commencement of this act, this act refers to the Hindu Marriage Act 1955, shall be null and void, and on a petition presented by either party thereto against the other party, be so declared by a decree of nullity, if it contravenes any one of the conditions specified in clauses 1, 4th, and 5th of section 5. So before going to the next slide, I would just tell that section 5 specifies some of the conditions which are required for a Hindu marriage. So the clause 1, 4th, and 5th specify different conditions which require to be fulfilled for a Hindu marriage. 5 clause 1 says that a person should not have a subsisting marriage when he marries another individual. Subclause 4 says that subclause 4th and 5th talk about sapinda and prohibited degrees of relationship, which I will talk about later in the slide. So in this definition, or what has been quoted from the section in this passage, uh, as you can note that this refers to a decree of nullity and not decree of annulment. So in case of voidable marriages, the marriage is considered to be valid till the time the aggrieved person does not reach the court and says that I want this marriage to be cancelled. So in that case, the court has to give a decree of annulment, which basically means that the court has cancelled, or the court has overturned the result of the marriage ceremony, or the marriage itself. However, in case of void marriages, the decree of nullity, which just means that the court has clarified what was the situation in reality. So the marriage was not subsisting even in fact, and therefore the court by decree of nullity just clarifies it and just makes it evident that this marriage had not existed at any point of time. So this is the difference between a degree of nullity and a degree of annulment. So so this is the explanation part. A void marriage is no marriage, as I have already mentioned. It is a marriage which does not exist from its very beginning. It is called, however, it is called a marriage because two persons have undergone the ceremonies of marriage. So just because they have undergone some rituals and ceremonies, it is called as a marriage. However, it does not exist neither in fact nor in law. Since they absolutely lack capacity to marry, they cannot, by just undergoing ceremonies, become husband and wife in the eyes of law. So as I have told about the three clauses of section 5, 1, 4th, and 5th, which specify certain conditions. If those conditions are not fulfilled, so the marriage cannot be contracted between two persons if they violate those conditions. Yeah. So no, by the second bullet point, which says that no legal consequence flows, so it means that in case of a void marriage, there is no legal liability on either the husband or the wife to basically follow the obligations which a husband or which a wife should perform in a valid marriage, or to for that matter, even in a voidable marriage. So no legal consequences flows. That means when a marriage does not exist in the eyes of law, so there cannot be any legal consequences or any legal obligations for the husband and wife in those cases as well. So the third point says, in respect of a void marriage, no decree of court is necessary. It is not the decree of the court which renders such a marriage void. It is an existing fact that the marriage is void, and the court merely makes a judicial declaration of that fact. So I have already told about you. I have already explained this particular thing. However, we will see in a later part of the slides that that though a decree of court is not necessary, it is desirable because it clarifies the situation to the parties and to the world at large as well, that a particular marriage did not actually existed. Yeah. So section 11, which talks about the void marriages, is prospective, and by prospective it means that it comes, or it applies to those marriages which have happened after the implementation of the Hindu Marriage Act 1955. So for those marriages which happened before it, the section would not apply. And so the locus standi, which mentioned that it is significant to note that the phrase on a petition presented by either party thereto against the other party implies that only actual parties to the marriage can seek such relief. So by referring to either parties, and by also saying that the petition can be filed against the party, it sort of restricts the it sorts of restricts the filing of petition under section 11 only to the uh, deemed husband or deemed wife in case of void marriages. So a third person or a stranger or even a relative in that sense cannot come and cannot reach the court and say that this particular marriage is void and you should give a decree of you should give a decree of nullity in for this marriage. Only the parties, the husband or the wife, can reach the court for such a decree. Yeah. So now we will discuss the grounds for void marriage, about which are mentioned in section 5 in a little bit detail. So first ground is an earlier subsisting marriage. So the marriage of a person who is already married and who has not obtained a lawful dissolution of the first marriage is a void marriage because of violation of section 5 clause 1. So if a Hindu male indulges in a second marriage without divorcing his first wife, then the second marriage would be a void marriage, because this is a condition that under the Hindu Marriage Act, a Hindu male can only have one wife at a time, and without divorcing the first wife, he cannot marry another female. So the same applies even to female. So if a female has a subsisting marriage, she cannot contact another marriage with another person. So this is simply the first ground for a void marriage. The second ground is the prohibited degrees of relationship. The parties should not be within the degree of prohibited relationship unless the custom or usage governing each of them permits a marriage between the two. So the degrees of prohibited relationship are simply relationships which can be said to be blood related. So there are relations like someone's grandfather, grandmother, or grand niece. So these relations which are in some way or the other related by blood, there is some sort of connection through blood in these degrees of relationship. These are regarded as prohibited relationships, and a person if a person marries another who is within this degree of prohibited relationship, then that marriage would be void. And also the second part, which says that the custom or usage governing each of them permits a marriage, then this section or this clause wouldn't apply. So by saying this, it means that if in a certain basically community or a tribe, etc., a marriage is permitted between, say, uh, a grandmother and a grandson, for an example. If such a marriage is permitted, and if it has been a custom from a long period of time within that tribe or that clan, then this particular subclause wouldn't apply to them. Then the third point is the sapinda relationship. So for word sapinda relation, the word sapinda derives from the word pinda, which refers to the basically so the concept of pind arrives from like giving uh, a funeral to one's ancestor. So it is believed that two persons who are eligible to give the funerary rites to a particular ancestor cannot be allowed to marry each other. So in case of sapinda relationships, there is a concept that if a person is a if two persons are either ancestors from a are the ancestors of a common lineal ascendant, then they are said to be in sapinda relationships. However, there are certain degree of generations to which it would apply. So from the mother's side, if there are from the mother's side, it applies to 3 generations, and from the father's side, it applies to 5 generations. So if a person is within the degrees of these sapinda relationships, then those marriages also would be considered void. So these are the 3 grounds mainly under section 5 for void marriages. Other than those, there are some general grounds such as which also has been reiterated by the Supreme Court. So the parties must be Hindus. If one of the parties is not a Hindu, then that marriage would cannot be solemnized under the Hindu Marriage Act. For that, the marriage can be done either through conversion or through the Special Marriage Act. So under the Hindu Marriage Act, it is a condition that the parties must be Hindus. Secondly, the marriage must be solemnized according to section 7. So the section 7 specified some of the sacraments or ceremonies which have to be like the saptapadi, in like the saptapadi, which has to be done for a marriage to have been for considering a marriage to be successfully solemnized. So these two conditions have been laid down by the Supreme Court, and it has been held that in contravention of the above two conditions, the marriage would be void. So yeah, now we will look at some of the cases on the issue. So in Dheeraj versus Kavita, which is a case of Bombay High Court, a marriage was solemnized between man and woman. However, the woman had an existing marriage. It was alleged that man was aware of such marriage at time of solemnization, and hence it was no ground to ask for declaration of annulment of marriage. However, court said that collusion does not bar a party from asking court for declaration of marriage to be annulled as void ab initio. So in this case, one of the parties was aware that the other person is having a spouse living at the time of their marriage. However, the court said that such a collusion or such a knowledge of the fact of an existing marriage could not bar the person from claiming a decree of nullity, and even in that case the marriage would be void. The second case is that of Devaki Panjaria versus Shashi Bhushan. This is a Supreme Court case. The Supreme Court held that where both parties acknowledge the existence and validity of a spouse pre-existing marriage, approaching court for declaration of nullity was not necessary. However, if there was dispute over the validity and existence of the prior marriage, approaching court for declaration of nullity is necessary. So in there are this basically refers to some of the disputes which arise. So in many cases it is not very clear, and it is difficult to prove that if a prior marriage is existing or not. So in those cases, the role of the court becomes important, and it is necessary that the court recognizes, and the court in its order or judgment says that a particular marriage was existing prior to this marriage, and therefore this marriage would be void. So in those cases, the decree of a court of nullity becomes necessary. There was also another case by the name of Yamuna Bai versus Anantrao. In this case, the Supreme Court took the view that a marriage covered by Section 11 is void ipso geo, that is void from the very inception. Such a marriage must be ignored. So this is basically the reiteration of what all we have been discussing this far, that a void marriage is doesn't exist in the eyes of law, and also it is deemed to not exist in fact as well. So this is just a reiteration of that. So the second part, which says that it was further held by this court that a formal declaration of the nullity of such a marriage is not a mandatory requirement, though such an option is available to either of the parties to a marriage. So in case of a void marriage, even if two parties and just give up their obligations and go to so if a female in a void marriage leaves the husband and goes to her maternal home, there is no remedy for the husband, and in that case there is no need for the wife to get a decree of nullity from the court just because the marriage does not actually exist as well. So in those cases, it is not necessary to get a degree of nullity. So this is the last part. In the case of Subhash Babu versus Andhra Pradesh, also we have almost discussed about this part as well, but I would just read it for your reference. So though the law specifically does not cast obligation on either party to seek declaration of nullity of marriage, and it may be open to the parties even without recourse to the court to treat the marriage as a nullity, such a course is neither prudent nor intended, and a declaration in terms of Section 11 of the Hindu Marriage Act will have to be asked for the purpose of precaution and or recall. Therefore, until the declaration contemplated by Section 11 of the Hindu Marriage Act is made by a competent court, the woman with whom second marriage is solemnized continues to be the wife within the meaning of Section 494 IPC and would be entitled to maintain a complaint against her husband. So, in this case, it has been said that it is desirable that a person that the parties get a degree of nullity, because just because of the reason that it clarifies the situation to the world at large and also to the parties as well. So this also further indirectly talks about a presumption of marriage. So in this case, as it has been said that until a degree of nullity is claimed, so the uh, so in the second part, it is written that until the declaration contemplated by Section 11 of the Hindu Marriage Act is made by a competent court, the woman with whom second marriage is continues to be the wife. So this indirectly talks about a presumption of marriage, that until there is such a degree, it will be presumed that the marriage actually exists in law and in fact as well. So therefore, though such degree of nullity is not a necessity at all, but getting the degree is desirable, and it sort of clarifies the situation for everyone. Therefore, the court ruled that getting such a degree is desirable. So that is all from this video. I hope it helps a little bit in understanding the concept of void marriages. And for the I do not have much clarity on the concepts of prohibited and sapinda relationships. So I hope you can look about those for others from other sources. Thank you very much, and if there was any mistake in the video, I humbly apologize for that. Thank you very much.